Three big weather problems. Heavy rain and flash flooding. Number two, a nor'easter with snow in late May. Are you kidding? And number three, severe weather is creeping back into the picture yet again. We've got three questions: who, when, and where. I've got three answers just for you, coming right up, along with a look at your Memorial Day weekend forecast. So don't go anywhere. This is Cold Rain's Weather World, and a new episode starts right now. Hello, friends, and welcome into another exciting edition of Cold Rain's Weather World, where we've got all the weather. It's the fastest growing new weather show on the internet, and I wouldn't be able to say that without you tuning in. So thank you for subscribing. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching every day. And we've got quite a bit of weather to talk about today, including a flash flooding and heavy rain threat returning to the mid-Mississippi Valley, a nor'easter bringing snow potentially to the northeast here in late May, and we're going to see severe weather creep back into the picture over the holiday weekend for some of you. So we're going to get into all of that here in just a minute, but we always start the show with our Weather IQ question. And just like yesterday, today's question is about drought, and you may not know the answer to this one. So if you know it, type it in the comment section. If you don't know it, just hang out to the end of the show and I will tell you exactly what the answer is, and then you can go and tell everybody else what you learned on Cold Rain's Weather World. So here's the question: which of the following tools is used to measure soil moisture during drought conditions? A tensiometer, a Buzzard collector, an anemometer, or a tricorder? You may be able to eliminate a couple of those right off the bat, but as I said, if you don't know the answer, just hang out to the end of the show and I will tell it to you. All right, we're going to roll strong right out of the gate with the satellite image, as we usually do. And look at this. You can see this big swirl up here over the Great Lakes. That's that low pressure that's brought all kinds of unsettled weather, including lots and lots of severe weather over the last few days. But that is winding up over the Great Lakes. You can see the counterclockwise flow around that. Lots of clouds up in the northeast through the Great Lakes and Midwest. Another system working into the west coast, where we're seeing some rainfall out in here in Seattle, Tacoma, Portland, places like that. Little disturbance working in across the middle of the country, and then another one in the subtropical branch bringing some clouds to South Texas and along the Gulf Coast into Florida. And so that's what we've got going on here in terms of the satellite presentation. Rain is falling out from under some of those clouds, as I said, up here near Seattle, Tacoma, Portland, places like that. We're looking at rain near Boise and up in the northwest. Plenty of rain over in the Great Lakes. So if we zoom in here, we can actually take a look at this a little bit better. Anywhere in New York State, from Albany to Ithaca over to the New York City metro area, we're finding lots and lots of rain. Some heavier rains along the coast up into Jersey, northern Jersey, up toward Boston. You guys are getting in on the rain. So if you're driving around near Pittsburgh, up through Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, slick spots, take it slow out there this morning. We're seeing lots of rain, even a little bit of rain shower activity approaching Memphis here, Fayetteville, Arkansas, and places like that. South Louisiana seeing a little bit of shower activity as well. Looking at the alerts map, folks, not a lot on there today. A couple of areas to keep in mind up here in the northern sections of the country, in the northern plains, the Dakotas, up into Minnesota, Wisconsin. We're seeing frost advisories and freeze warnings. So we're starting to see the last vestiges of winter. We've got one more last gasp of winter here in the Northeast, I think, this weekend before the next couple of days anyway, before we can strike it out and move on into summer for good. But we've got wind advisories across South Carolina. We're going to see windy conditions breaking out across quite a bit of the country today. But looking at the surface map, got that main low pressure up here over the Great Lakes. Secondary low pressures forming off the coast. This is going to act like a sort of a Miller B. This is going to fill, this is going to take over and wind up a little bit, bring some windy and rainy conditions, even some snow into the higher elevations. We're going to take a look a little bit more at that later on down the road. But that is going to affect you all up in the Northeast over the next couple of days. Frontal zone extending from our parent low back through the Carolinas. We'll see a little bit of shower and thunderstorm activity potentially down here in central Georgia, South Carolina today, southern North Carolina over the course of the afternoon. Some showers and thunderstorms, could be some strong storms here in eastern Florida. this afternoon. We'll look a little bit more at the severe threat later on, but anywhere from, essentially Montana down to western South Dakota, western Nebraska, Colorado, in here into Texas, a good portion of Texas, and southeastern Oklahoma, we could see showers and thunderstorms extending into Arkansas, Tennessee, and then an area of severe weather potentially over here into southern Oklahoma, north central Texas, including Dallas, Wichita Falls, close to Abilene, just south of Oklahoma City. Could definitely see some thunderstorm activity later on today for the Oklahoma City Minnesota game tonight. See a few thunder boomers around there. And then, of course, in the Pacific Northwest, looking at rainy and potentially some snowy conditions in the higher elevations out here. So that's your sensible weather for today. When I say sensible weather, that's the impacts that you feel at the surface, rain, snow, things like that. But that's what's going on out there today. As I said, windy conditions for much of the country. The only exception really is down here in the deep south and then over the high plains. For once, the North and South Dakota, you might have a calm day. You can get out there and not see lawn chairs blowing around, but windy conditions out west. Windy conditions with west and northwest winds over much of the east. We're going to see gusts this afternoon in the 20s, potentially even into the 30s for parts of the Carolinas, Virginia, up here in the mountains, Allegheny Plateau, Cumberland Plateau, places like that. We could see some gusts this afternoon, and of course, winds picking up in earnest as that nor'easter gets underway later today. Taking a look at high temperatures, warm across the south, very, very warm out in the desert southwest. We're starting to get up into the hundreds. It's going to be that time of year. We're going to see that more and more. 80s, 90s across much of the south. Northeast, you all are going to be very, very chilly the next couple of days. Highs in the 30s, even up in the 40s, 30s up in the mountains and the higher peaks up here in the Green Mountains, the White Mountains, where eventually some snow is going to fall, but 50s everywhere else, 60s up in the high plains, Midwest, places like that. Great Lakes, you all are in the 50s as well. So that's your high temperatures for this evening, or this afternoon, I should say. And then overnight tonight, lows dipping down into the 20s in the higher elevations of the Rockies, 30s potentially. We're seeing some of those frost advisories and freeze warnings up because we're going to see temperatures dip into the 30s and low 40s potentially in some of these areas up here across the north. So if you've got any tender vegetation concerns, maybe make sure you've got that under control. But that's what we're looking at for tonight, folks. And that is your temperature forecast for today. Now, over the next couple of days, in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, what I'm showing you here is the 500 millibar. This is 3.5 miles up, essentially, and we're looking at energy flowing along in the flow, okay? So this is going along in the mid-level flow, and some of this shows up very well, and some of it's very subtle. So if we go through the afternoon, this afternoon, look at this. I want to show you this. This is what is going to kick off a little bit of severe weather, and we're going to see these impulses come through over the next several days in the central and southern plains area that's going to spark showers and thunderstorms. Even got a little activity down here in Florida that's going to help kick off some showers and thunderstorms down there as well. But look at this. As we go over the course of the afternoon, see that little disturbance. It moves through Oklahoma and Texas. That's going to kick off showers and thunderstorms there. And then we'll see more disturbances kind of move through the flow as we go through the next couple of days. Here comes another one here. Very ill-defined, but enough when you've got instability at the surface. It brings a little wind shear aloft, and you start to see some lift. Eventually, what we're going to see, you've got a little bit of mid-level ridging here. That's going to put the cap on a big, widespread severe weather outbreak. But we've got another trough working in that's going to set up a low-pressure zone out in the lee of the Rockies, and we'll see a low pressure develop out here and potentially bring a little bit more activity as we go on through the weekend into early next week. But in the meantime, these little disturbances, what they're going to do, and I'm showing you this because it's important to know it affects the weather. These little disturbances like this, they're going to travel. You see how these streamlines kind of go to the southeast? They're going to travel this way. And so when you get into this whole entire area in here, we're going to be looking for essentially showers, potentially thunderstorms, and repeated rounds of this over the course of the next few days is going to lead to a flash flooding threat. It's also going to lead to a severe weather threat. Taking a look here at the SPC, yesterday we didn't see a lot out here in terms of slight risk or anything like that, just had a little marginal risk. I speculated we could start to see some slight risk creep in, and we sure did. So south of Oklahoma City down here toward Abilene over into Dallas, Fort Worth today, could see some severe weather kickoff very low probability of tornadoes, although it's not out of the question. Hail and wind are the primary threat, with hail being the bigger threat, potentially very large hail. Supercells are going to develop and then merge into clusters, and some of that organization is going to help to organize the wind threat too. And very cool temperatures in the mid-levels are going to help make efficient hail, produce efficient hailing out here. So that's what's going on with these little mid-level disturbances working through, acting on some instability that's out here. And so that's today. Tomorrow, sort of the same story, but the slight risk shifts back over to eastern Colorado, western Nebraska, western Kansas, but we've got a big marginal risk. I wouldn't be surprised to see this slight risk actually expand a little bit better of a wave coming through, plenty of moisture returning out here. So we've got not much of a tornado threat again, wind and hail being the primary threats here. Tomorrow again with some of the organization of supercells into clusters through tomorrow afternoon. And then as we go on through the day on Saturday, again, a big area of marginal risk from Alabama really reaching into Georgia all the way back into Colorado, with the center of the threat area highlighted around Oklahoma. So again, a big area of returning moisture out of the Gulf. These little disturbances will work in and act on that, and pinpointing exactly where the biggest threat will occur is a little bit difficult, but you've got a big area of marginal risk and a slight risk as well within that will probably shift and expand as we go over the next couple of days. But be on the lookout through the weekend, anywhere from say Nebraska here. Let's draw this so you can see it, and I'll get back on pink. Nebraska into Colorado, down into North Texas, all the way across the deep south into the mid-Mississippi Valley, anywhere in that zone. Pay attention for severe weather alerts as we go through the weekend. Fortunately, it doesn't look like a big widespread severe weather outbreak because we don't have that big negatively tilted trough coming in and all those dynamics that we've seen in the past couple of days. We also have a risk down here in Florida too. I didn't really mention that, but eastern coast of Florida, Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, down toward Miami, you all could see severe weather over the next couple of days down there. So that's what we've got going on, folks. See, there it is again, showing up on Saturday. And that's what we've got going on from a severe weather standpoint. That's your Thursday forecast. Hard to believe we're already at the end of the week. So we're going to turn our attention now to the 14-year anniversary of one of the deadliest and costliest tornadic events in U.S. history. Just after 5:30 p.m. on May the 22nd in 2011, a large tornado moved into Joplin, Missouri, and destroyed much of that area. Take a look.
On the bottom of the tornado. On the bottom of the tornado. Be quiet.
That is a scary looking twister. Can you imagine staring down the barrel of that? A mile wide. Incredible damage from an EF5 tornado. This tornado is one of the deadliest ever, as I said, and the costliest tornado to hit the states as well, with an estimated cost damage of $2.8 billion. 158 people lost their lives, over 1,000 were injured, and some estimates put the wind speed between 225 and 250 miles per hour. It took Joplin a long time to recover from that. Hopefully that is one of those things that we will not see again for a long time. We've got some severe weather coming up over the next few days, but nothing looks to be able to produce a tornado of that magnitude, thank goodness. All right, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we have another problem other than severe weather. It is heavy rain and flash flooding, and you can see already for Friday a slight risk of heavy rainfall exists, centered really on Fayetteville, Arkansas, Tulsa, Springfield. You guys are very close to this, and so watch what happens as we go to Saturday. Same area, just expands a little bit, a marginal risk around that, and then boom, look at that on Sunday, big time expansion of the slight risk. May even get in here to see a moderate risk as we go through the weekend. We end up seeing how much rain piles up ahead of this. But anywhere from Kansas City to Memphis, down here south of Dallas, Wichita Falls, Shreveport. So we're looking at a lot of rain ready to come in, folks. And why is that? Well, we've got uh, return flow, a southern branch of the jet stream bringing in copious moisture in through the deep south and to the southeast. And watch what happens as we go through the day on Thursday. Today, we're going to start to see a little bit of moisture return out here in Texas and Oklahoma. But look what happens we get in tomorrow. Start to see a big area of moisture return out here in the south central plains into the Mississippi Valley. And you can see these little disturbances showing up in this red, sort of deep yellows and red colors. These are indicative of the model showing shower and thunderstorm activity working through a particular area. But just lots of moisture return coming up through here for as far as the eye can see. It just sort of builds and builds. We're out here into Sunday now, into Monday of next week. Look at all of this moisture coming in, and some of this is because we've got the model showing again a system, a complex, probably a convective complex moving across the south, just dropping tons and tons of rain. When you see big moisture environment like this, thunderstorms that form are going to be very, very, very efficient at dropping a ton of rain. So that's why we have a big slight risk area for multiple days. We're going to see multiple waves come through, multiple rounds of showers and thunderstorms, and your 7-day Weather Prediction Center forecast has a big dollop of multi-inch rainfall centered right over the area that I showed you before. Fayetteville, Arkansas, Springfield, Joplin, places like that. But look at this. Anywhere in that pink area, we're looking at 3-4 inches of rain. Some of these areas start to get up to 6, 7, 8 inches of rain in the main threat area there. So folks, you need to be aware through the Memorial Day weekend. Unfortunately, it's going to be a very, very wet Memorial Day weekend in those areas. And so you need to pay attention if flash flood warnings are issued. Have a plan to get to higher ground and know what to do, okay? So that's what's going on there. Now, turning our attention to problem number 3, that we're not the same order that I introduced them to you, but this is the third in our series of issues. This is the nor'easter for the northeastern part of the country. And look, so we're looking at Thursday afternoon here on our surface map. Big low pressure centered over the Great Lakes area just up into Canada. Now, watch what happens as we go through the afternoon today. Low pressure starting to get organized as we get on into the overnight hours tonight, really starting to organize. And look, what is this up here? Snowfall in some of the higher elevations, the Green Mountains, the White Mountains. We're seeing snowfall start to break out in some of those higher elevations. The European shows this as a mix. It's going to be a wet snow. You know, we're not looking at 2 feet of dry powder where you go out and ski in, of course. We're not seeing that, but we are going to see this low pressure dip down into the mid to low 990s and wind up. We're going to see heavy rain and wind along the coast. We're going to see snow in the higher elevations, at least a little bit. The GFS is a bit more enthusiastic, but I think it's gotten off to a holiday start early. So we'll kind of discount it probably, but let's just take a look anyway and see what it's showing. So that nor'easter winds up and it moves on out of the picture as we get later on into Sunday. And finally wraps up. So this is Saturday at Saturday morning about 8 a.m. And if we go through the day Saturday, showers pulling out, temperatures are going to be warming up behind that. So we get into Sunday, into Monday, we'll start to finally see some nice weather up here in New England. Look at this. So could have a very nice Memorial Day up here in New England, but not before we see plenty of rain and wind and snow maybe to start your weekend. So this is the European model's depiction of how much snow we're looking at. Not very much. A few inches and spots is what we're seeing, much of it up through, as I said, the White Mountains here. Look what the GFS does. It gives us a lot more snow. Of course, it's the GFS, and so we have to always consider that when we talk about the GFS. Just knowing that it's the GFS reduces credibility slightly. So yesterday it had well more than a foot here. I think it's coming back to earth slowly but surely. When we have discrepancy, what do? We turn to the ensembles, and that's what we're doing. The European ensembles are much more in line with the European operational, and so we can expect to see probably some wet snow, some pockets of 1, maybe 2 inches in spots, but really looking a little bit less than that. Probably about 1/10 to 1/2 inch is going to be much more ubiquitous up here in those areas. But that's what's going on. Looking at the whole entire country as we go through, I'm going to change to another display here. Looking at this, how we go through the rest of your Memorial Day weekend, we're going to run this on out let's start here Friday afternoon. Okay, let's run this back to Friday afternoon. So we're looking at Friday afternoon here, and I'm just going to use the arrows to click this over. So rain up in the Northeast and the Great Lakes area Friday afternoon, out in the Midwest, down into the Central Plains as well. We're going to see those rounds of severe weather and locally heavy rains as we get on into the mid-Mississippi Valley as well. Low pressure as we get on into Saturday morning. Low pressure winding up along the northeast coast, pulling out just little waves coming in here into the plains, into the south, deep south area here, upper part of the deep south, I should say, and looking at rainfall continuing through the day on Saturday. So your Saturday is going to be wet in those areas that I just mentioned, and then up in the Northeast, that rain is pulling out. Rain in Florida as we get on into Saturday evening. Sunday morning, rolling around here Sunday morning. Okay, check this out. So we've still got those same areas here in the Midwest, mid-Mississippi Valley, down toward the Southeast, under the gun for some rain. Everywhere else is pretty much dry. A couple little showers up here in the Northeast. Sunday afternoon into Sunday evening, look at this. Big area of potential showers all the way encompassing much of the upper Southeast, the Tennessee Valley, mid-Mississippi Valley, up into the plains even could see some showers. So a little bit unsettled Sunday afternoon. I'm starting to get a little bit concerned about the Indy 500, although the rain may hold off for the first part of the day. But the Coca-Cola 600 down here in Charlotte, starting to see some signs that we might have issues with rainfall during that because it's an evening race. Then we get on in here to Sunday evening, showers and thunderstorms over much of the south and eastern portion of the country, I should say. High pressure and control up over the Great Lakes. Couple showers working in as we get into Monday morning in New England, but not a washout up there. Mid-Atlantic over here into the Tennessee Valley, mid-Mississippi Valley, looking at potential showers and storms as we go through Memorial Day. So could be a wet area in wet Memorial Day down here from Texas over to Ohio, down into North Carolina, potentially parts of Georgia, Alabama as well. And another little wave developing out in the west in the Rockies that is going to send some shower activity back into the lee of the mountains out here. So, folks, that is your Memorial Day forecast, looking at temperatures over the course of the next few days as well, just to give you an idea of what's going on here. Cool on Friday to start your weekend activities and festivities up here in the Northeast. 40s up in Maine, 30s where we're seeing some snow up in the higher elevations, 50s across the north, 60s returning into the Midwest, and warm across the south, reaching into the lee of the Rockies down here, 70s, 80s, and 90s across the south, getting on into Saturday. Much the same, warm out here in the Midwest, cool in the Northeast with that system pulling out. A little bit cool in the Central Plains, but warming up out west with ridging out there, 80s and 90s down across the south. Sunday, about the same story, starting to warm up finally in the Northeast, getting into the 50s, if you can call that warm. Out in the west, ridging is pushing 80s and 90s all the way up into Washington State, and then more of the same, just warming up across the north and keeping it a little bit cooler than normal in some spots out here, particularly in the center of the country where we may find clouds and more disturbed weather. So 80s and 90s confined to the south. So that's what we're looking at. If we look out the 6 to 10 day forecast, this is next Tuesday to next Saturday, right? We're seeing a signal for below normal, strong signal across much of the Tennessee Valley into the southeast, southern portion of the country with the exception of Florida. Warm out west. And looking at precipitation anomalies for the same period, Tuesday to Saturday, it's going to be wetter than normal. That's what I'm trying to say, as these disturbances kind of move through the southern portion of the country, with the front probably stalling in here in some ways, and then drier than normal across the north. So that's what we've got going on. Your Indianapolis 500 forecast. Look here, folks. I want to show you this because a lot of people are excited about the race, and of course 30% chance on Sunday, so that should be hopefully holding off through the end of the day. That is the hope. Looking at the Coca-Cola 600, it starts later in the evening. We're starting to see some potential for showers kind of move in Sunday night, potential thunderstorms. So we'll keep our eyes on that. But that's what's going on. Geological update. Had an earthquake in Greece that is showing up here, so we could see that. Big earthquake over in Greece. A lot of people felt this, 6.2, but not extensive damage or anything like that. It was like near the island of Crete, so it wasn't centered directly over the mainland, but a lot of people felt that all the way down into Egypt. People were feeling some of the shaking. Nothing on the volcano front. Solar weather, quiet, quiet, quiet across the board. That coronal hole's turning away. We've got sunspots turning in toward us, but no flaring, no filaments, no big solar wind streams or anything like that, which leads to very low chance of aurora, even lower tomorrow. So not a lot going on there. But folks, that is it for the day. Let's just wrap everything up as we always do with today's Weather IQ question. What was it? Which of the following tools is used to measure soil moisture during drought conditions? A tensiometer, a buzzard collector, an anemometer, or a tricorder? Well, the answer is a tensiometer. That is what is used to measure the soil moisture during drought conditions, okay? A buzzard collector are the little tips on the warp nacelles of a starship from Star Trek. An anemometer, of course, measures wind, and a tricorder takes measurements. Again, another Star Trek device. I just had to slip that in there. It was just the perfect opportunity to do it. It takes measurements of surrounding areas, body images, things like that. So it would be cool if we had a tricorder. We could just whip that out and measure anything we wanted to. Wouldn't that be nice? All right. And that is it, folks. I hope it's been fun today. We've got had a lot to go over, and hopefully it gives you a chance to prepare for your upcoming weekend. Hopefully you've got some holiday plans, doing some fun things out there. One thing that I thought it would be fun to share with you too is today is the birthday of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of Sherlock Holmes. And so that's something that a lot of people enjoy reading and watching. I love those Sherlock Holmes movies that Robert Downey Jr. starred as Sherlock Holmes. Those were great. Jude Law was Watson. They were fun. If you haven't seen those, check those out. Also in 1960 was the Great Chilean Earthquake. It was the largest earthquake ever recorded at 9.5 on the Richter scale. And also this day in 1992, NBC said good night to Johnny Carson. It was his last night as the host of The Tonight Show. Although many people wanted or thought that David Letterman would be his successor, it turned out to be Jay Leno. Now you know the weather. Now you know other things too that hopefully are fun. And I hope you have a great day. And as always, this is Cold Rain reminding you that if other channels run 24/7, we've got you covered right here, right now at Cold Rain's Weather World 4814. Have a great day, folks. We'll see you again soon.